Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. I hope everybody joining us is somewhere a lot warmer than where we are right now. There are legit snowflakes on our windows around the house. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, we are going to be talking about the idea of digital leadership and why James and I are so in deep when it comes to this idea and so passionate about it. And we've even named it the year of the digital leader in 2026. James, why don't you say good morning to everybody and let them know who you are if they haven't met you before?
Yes, good morning, everyone, and thanks for being with us. As everyone kind of pops on here on LinkedIn, feel free to drop a note in the comments section where you're coming from. As Emma said, it's freezing down here. We're in our basement too. We're basement dwellers for our business, and it's like -5 degrees here in Madison, Wisconsin. So we're just slowly warming up. But yeah, if we don't already know you, my name is James Roloff. We're on Roloff Consulting here with Emma and Weston and Sess on our team too. And we help teams with their digital strategy. So helping them understand, kind of build out that audit and roadmap of how they show up in the digital world, how to get found online, how to build online visibility, and how to turn that into revenue for your business. So that's what we do. And as Emma said, our focus this year is on helping people kind of cultivate that idea of digital leadership. So how you show up online, how you show up within your organization, and also how you grow personally, how you will actually grow and become a digital leader and start to leverage technology. So that is the discussion today. And we are going to be kind of talking through some of these concepts. It is definitely a discussion. So if you have questions, if you have thoughts, if you have stories that are related to what's going on within your organization, what you're trying to do, we highly encourage you to drop those in the comments as well too. Because again, the goal here is to really help people understand what it means to be a digital leader and some core concepts around that.
I love to see the comments coming in. If you're joining us, tell us where you're joining from. And as James said, this is a discussion. We want your questions. We want your comments. We want to interact with you. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing this live. That's the entire point of us all being here together. I don't know if it makes me feel better or worse that Atlanta is also cold, but I have a feeling our cold might be a different definition. So I'm going to pull up just a couple of slides that are going to kind of guide the conversation. But like James said, we're going to be chatting. We're going to be talking through these ideas. And we really want all of you to be engaged in the discussion as well. So keep your comments coming. Tell us where you're joining from. Tell us your thoughts, your questions, your ideas on how people can work through these concepts to keep it all as interactive as possible. So as I said, we have kind of defined 2026 as the year of the digital leader. And big part of the reason that we have brought this forward as a concept that we want to talk more about this year is throughout our careers, and specifically in our role as consultants, we see this major gap opening up and widening in the world of leadership today. And not to sound like ChatGPT, but in this ever-changing world, that's true. ChatGPT prompts that forward as something for people to talk about and use that as an opener on a regular basis, because technology is moving quicker and faster than we've ever seen it before. And right here in this moment in time, things are developing and changing at the slowest rate that they probably ever will moving forward. And that's difficult to keep up with. That's difficult to adapt to. And as that continues to increase in speed, there's this big gap of the leaders that are keeping pace and the leaders that aren't.
Yeah, I'll jump in there too and just say that the rate of change is not going to slow down. It's only going to accelerate, right? With technology and societal changes and all these happening, it's not going to slow down. It's only going to get more crazy as we move into this. And so, what we're seeing is that the reaction that people have to this change is that they react and they become followers and they follow what other companies are doing. They follow the lead of what they see in the marketplace, and they're constantly in this reactionary mode. So it feels so overwhelming to have all of these changes happening. And again, we do a lot of consulting in the sales and marketing space and how to grow a business using digital tools. And what we see is a lot of people waiting to be told what to do in order to grow their business, right? It's this constant reaction of what they're doing. And by definition, if you are following, if you are reacting, you are behind the curve, right? Because if you see someone doing something, by the time you make an effort to go do it and the time you actually implement it, you are now behind that curve. So a big mindset shift when it comes to leadership in the digital world is that you need to be proactive with what you're doing, which again, we'll talk about that here. But I just want to kind of call that out, that like what we're seeing as a symptom of this rapid change is just a lot of reaction and a lot of following. And that's not a good way to lead in your business, in your life, and externally in your industry too.
And I think to your point, James, with this idea of people reacting, a lot of that reaction comes from, anybody who follows me knows I talk a lot about like FOMO based strategy and people chasing shiny objects. And that comes from that viewpoint that you just mentioned of waiting for someone to tell you what you need to do to grow your business, waiting for someone to tell you what magical solution is going to plop down in your lap that's going to solve all of your problems. And when you are in that spot of looking and seeking for somebody to tell you where to go, you're going to go down the wrong path a lot of the time because you're not doing the work that you need to inside your business, externally in the market, and within yourself as an individual leader to be able to figure out what's going to work within your environment, with your team, and the problems that you're trying to solve. And so this like reaction is almost primed because people know that there are leaders that feel overwhelmed, that they can, come out and say, don't worry, AI will solve all of your problems. It is an easy button. And that's just realistically not how it works. And so what we're going to talk about today is kind of 3 key pillars that we've identified that will help people move from this position of being really reactive to what's happening in the market and around them and the problems that they're having in their business, and move towards truly being a proactive leader.
Yes. And I think a lot of that comes down to, we talk about here intentionality, right? And this is what we're seeing a lot of times when we go into businesses that, as you said, chasing shiny objects, typically what ends up happening is you kind of lose sight of what your business is even all about. You kind of just, you get so caught up in trying to just stay afloat with all of the overwhelm, with the rapid changes happening, that what ends up happening is that you forget who your customers are, and you forget what you do for your customers, and you forget the value that you provide, and you don't understand technology and digital strategy as a way to enable you to better serve your customers. Instead, you're just constantly trying to adapt and adopt as much as possible and throw it into your business. And that creates a expensive problem internally. It creates a lot of overwhelm internally. And also means you're not serving your customers the way that you can and should be. So that's, again, a big part of this mindset. So as Emma said, we have a couple of things that we're going to talk about today that we see as like the core pillars of digital leadership. So starting, we're going to talk about clarity. And this is truly internal within your organization, you as a leader. And maybe you run your own business. Maybe you're an executive in a business. Maybe you're a manager or director level. Maybe you're just a normal employee. It doesn't really matter what level you're at. You can be a leader and you can help set clarity within your organization. So we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about external authority. So outside of your organization, how are you leveraging digital tools and technology to build trust and credibility in the marketplace? This is, again, a lot of stuff that me and Emma do within Roll-Off Consulting, because a lot of the authority building lends itself to sales and marketing growth, right? So we'll talk about that. And then finally, personal growth. On the personal side of things, how are you taking action and showing up as your authentic self to move the vision forward, move that trust and credibility forward? How are you leveraging all of this stuff for personal growth to be more successful? So those are the 3 pillars that we have within our digital leadership, concept. Again, we'll kind of dive into each one of them. Before we skip ahead, anything you want to add to that?
Well, I do want to add, and this is kind of cutting off your face, so sorry about that, James, but Dan added that he likes being behind the curve because it feels comfortable and right, and that he just needs to find the right people to follow so that he doesn't go down the wrong path. I actually think that this, and Dan, I know that you're always poking a little bit of fun at us in these comments when you put that out there, but I do think that there is nothing wrong with finding people that you identify as strong thought leaders that understand what they're doing, that you put your trust into, and you decide to adopt the way that they are going about doing business. And I hope that people would feel like we might be some of the right people to follow. There's nothing wrong with following as long as you're not doing it blindly. But when we take a look at what we see in the market and when we're doing our work with consulting clients or just even talking with people, whether that's in the comments on content online or like what we hear in the marketplace, more often than not, it's blind following with hopes and dreams attached, as opposed to deeper research, understanding, like, again, the clarity component that we're going to talk about here in a moment, and really understanding where you want to take your company and then choosing the right path based off of that clarity. You don't always have to be forging a whole new path for yourself that's different than everybody else in order to be a digital leader. But we're going to kind of touch on a little bit of this when it comes to the clarity piece as well as the growth and what some of that internal growth looks like with continuous learning that allows you to pick the right path to go down.
Yeah, I'll add there too. When we're talking about not following, it's more about your core business, right? Like I'm following tax advice and tax strategy because I'm not a tax accountant and I have vendors that I work with for accounting, right? And that is something that you should look towards other people who are leading in areas that you're trying to learn. What we're saying here from a following perspective is like for your core business, you should not just be trying to follow what the leader in your marketplace is doing and say, okay, if they're doing that, I can do it too. Or if they're implementing that solution, I have to implement that solution too. That's more what we're saying. For sure, 100%. Part of that last pillar there, that personal growth, that comes from having mentors. That comes from having people that you're learning from teachers that you trust. That is part of growth, is learning from other people and having those discussions. So I want to clarify that right off the bat. When we talk about leadership, we're talking about leadership for you and your business and you personally. We're not talking about the fact that you should, always be like this lone cowboy by yourself doing everything, from scratch. That's not what we're saying. We're actually saying the opposite of that when it comes to growth. So let's first talk about internal clarity. And again, this is what we talk about when it comes to inside your organization. For you, again, like I mentioned, you can be the owner and the entrepreneur of a company. You could be an executive, you could be a director, you could be a random person in the company. It's a random. Everyone has their role. You could be anyone within an organization, and you should be actively trying to develop this clarity. Because the big note here is that if you don't have clarity around what actually matters, who your customer is, what they're trying to do, better themselves. What is that transformation that your customer is trying to make? You have to have clarity on that. Otherwise, you will get overwhelmed with all the different options of what you can do within your business. Essentially, having this clarity and this vision for where you want to take your business is what enables you to filter out all the different things that are coming your way, right? You don't need to adopt every AI tool. You don't need to run every single strategy. You don't need to build every single service out if it doesn't align with that internal clarity and that internal vision of where you want to take your business. So this is probably, the most important part of defining the start of digital leadership is first doing a lot of soul searching and asking the question why often, to try and figure out what is that clear vision that I have for my business. And then how do I execute on that? How do I communicate that to my team so that we're all marching in the same direction? So Emma, I don't know what thoughts you want to add to that too.
So there's a couple of things that pop into mind. So when we take a look at like focusing on what truly matters, James, I want to come back to you and I want to put this on you. What are the 3 questions that you think every person in a business should be able to answer about their vision or like the clarity of where the company is going?
I mean, for sure, you want to know who is my customer and what are they trying to do, right? What is the outcome they're trying to get out of there? And then finally, why does it matter? Like, why is that important Why is that an important problem to solve? So who's my customer? What is the problem we're solving for them? And why does it matter? That is something that every business should be able to answer, that they should be able to get that direction. And having clarity and answering those three questions very succinctly will allow you to actually execute on that strategy then. Because it is shocking how often you will encounter businesses who don't know who their customer is, or they don't know what problem they solve. They know what they make, they know what they create, they know, whatever they know, they know their, and this is, goes back to like the Simon Sinek, find your why, or start with why is his first book. A lot of businesses know what they create and how they create it, but they don't know why. They don't know why they do it. And if you don't know that why, how are you going to be able to lead your organization? How are you going to be able to inspire your customers to want to work with you? And some of the stuff sounds fluffy and cheesy on the high end of things, but it really isn't. Like people buy because you're able to successfully help them make that transformation they're trying to get in their lives. And you need to have that clarity within your organization. So that was a long way of answering that question for you.
Well, that's what I wanted to kind of set the stage with, because I want to come back to another comment that Dan has here tied to the idea of shiny objects and kind of just like blindly following. And when you are lacking that clarity of exactly what kind of problem you're trying to solve, and everybody in the business doesn't have that same vision of what problem you're solving for people, it gets really, really easy to get entrenched into the world of jargon and shiny objects and things that sound like they're going to solve your problem. So if you're in accounting and you're disconnected from the customer and all you're thinking about is how do I most efficiently do this? And they told me that this new shiny AI solution is going to solve all my problems. I'm going to be able to invoice people faster, blah, 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 blah. You get really caught up in this idea of not getting left behind. And this fear of missing out is really what drives people towards shiny objects, because they are being told that they will gain efficiency, they will get this, they will get that. And they get distracted by the benefits that are put in front of them, as opposed to re-anchoring back down into what is the purpose of our business? What are we here to do? And is that going to ultimately help us help that customer achieve the outcome that we're all here for? And when you can anchor back in that, sometimes the answer might be to go buy the shiny object. Sometimes the answer might be, hey, you know what? We could make a process change and we don't need to spend $100,000 on a software implementation in order to improve the experience for our customer, in order to help them reach that outcome more effectively, in order to remove friction that keeps our team from serving that customer more effectively. And so, like, without that true understanding that goes to the company level across the board, you don't have these anchor points to be able to drive decision. And right now, there are so many conversations in businesses across the world about needing to be more strategic, and people talking about how, they need their employees to dig a little bit deeper and be more strategic and not be so focused on execution. But we are constantly losing sight of where our strategies should be anchored, and whether or not those strategies give the team the information that they need to be able to make good decisions that, again, come back to that initial purpose. And so I think that there is a lot of work to be done in this clarity space. And you brought it up at the very beginning, James, that a lot of it comes in with like a little bit of soul searching, a lot of communication and conversation within your team. And once you have figured out the answer to those three questions, then you can start to move on to, okay, now we know what our anchor is. We know what's going to drive our decisions. Now we're going to bring in a new technology solution that supports this, or we're going to make a process change that supports this, or develop a new product that helps our customer do this better. And that's when it's time for you to really dig in and start providing detailed communication of that vision and the way that you're changing things and how you're going to interact with your customers moving forward. And I don't want to dive into it too deeply here, but I always talk about a 4P framework in order to communicate a vision with clarity. And that is having the purpose that ties back to what your company is here to do, how you are supporting your buyers, your customers, and making them get the outcome that you are supposed to provide and solve that problem. Then you have to have a really strong communication strategy tied to all of the people that are going to be impacted by that change. You have to be able to outline the process of the change or what you guys are doing within. Maybe it's not even a change. Maybe you're communicating this revamped vision with clarity. You need to help them understand the process of how you're going to help the customer or what is going to be changing so that people know what to expect. They know what they're signing on for, and they know what the desired outcome is supposed to be. And then the last piece as a leader is how you're going to participate in making that vision come to fruition. And so I have many posts on my profile digging into that 4P framework if you want to dive more into how to communicate your clarity. But I think for today, I want to just stay focused on this idea of like, what are the main questions that you need to have answers to and that your entire team needs to be connected to?
Yeah. And before we move on quick too, I think to really simplify this clarity side of things is just know the purpose of your organization. Like what is the purpose that you exist? And there's a great example that was given in a book by Peter Schultes called The Leadership Handbook. And he talked about, when you look at a car, what is the purpose of a car, right? And you can very clearly answer the purpose of having a car. But sometimes you take a look at the individual pieces within a car. If you pull out a steering wheel or you pull out a car seat, that single part of the car might not serve the purpose of the entire purpose of the car. But together, the system altogether helps move people and transports people, right? So within your organization, your sales department, your marketing department, your operations team, they might have their own little things that they're worried about. But what is the broader purpose of supporting the entire company and the goal of serving your customers? So again, if you're a single solopreneur, you're not having to worry about communicating this through your team, but you just want to know the purpose of your organization. Who's your customer? What problem do you solve for them? And why does it matter? So that's the internal side of being a good digital leader. And now we're going to talk about the external side of leadership. And that is authority. How are you becoming a trusted authority in your industry, in your marketplace through good digital leadership? And this is, the thing that me and Emma consult on the most for sure, is external authority. And both of our backgrounds are in sales and marketing, mostly on the sales side, actually. So this is how we grew our businesses. This is how we grew our sales, was through external authority. Creating content, teaching people, becoming that online expert that people want to work with. So again, this is a lot to unpack under this topic, but the initial thing I want to say is just that with digital technology and the way that people do research and buy things online today, they go online to do research. If you asked me 6 years ago or 5 years ago, I guess even, how people do it, I would say they go to Google and they maybe check social media to figure out who they should work with. Now it's they also ask AI. They will pop into ChatGPT or Google Gemini or even Google's new AI search, and they will research the problem they're facing. They will research solutions to that problem, and they will vet and usually even pick vendors before they even talk to a salesperson for solving their problem. So you as a leader, you need to become a trusted authority online. You need to be the one that shows up when people Google things or when they ask AI or they pop on social media. If you are showing up on a consistent basis, talking about the problems they have, talking about solutions, and most importantly, teaching, which is our framework, the favorite teacher framework. If you are the one teaching people, they will trust you. You can build that trust at scale, and you'll be the person that they want to work with. So this is a big part of the leadership model today, is externally taking that vision, taking the expertise you have, and going online with it. Emma, I'm sure you have plenty more thoughts on that too.
Well, so I want to, and it'll probably take a little bit for these comments to flow in. So we'll pop into the comments when we get them. But I want everybody to just like stop and think for a second. What type of leaders are you following? Who do you go to for information about your industry? Or let's say, when's the last time that you bought something based off of a LinkedIn post, an Instagram post, a TikTok post? The way we all buy has changed. And the way we make decisions has shifted pretty substantially too. And, you think about the biggest brands in the world, it's not necessarily their sales team that's out there hitting LinkedIn and making posts that are going viral. Hopefully they have some really good like social sellers on their team. But you think of household names and brands, their CEOs are sitting down on the couch at, CNBC to talk about their industry. They're being pulled in for commentary on what's happening in the marketplace at large. They're going on press tours when they release brand new products. That's obviously at a massive scale. But it is their leadership that is going out and creating maybe not even fully like deep trust, but a whole lot of noise about what it is that they're doing as an opportunity to get in front of buyers, get them to start thinking about the problem that they solve and how they can help them in that journey. And so if you as a leader in your company are just hoping that your sales team is going to get out there and grind and bring in what you need, it's not going to happen the way that it did 10 years ago. And I always hesitate when I say things like buying behavior has changed, cold calling is dead, like all this stuff, because we've been hearing this for a very long time. But the reality is that like COVID truly did change the game of how people buy. And I remember, James, you and I sitting in our kitchen having a conversation of like, how is anybody going to buy a software solution to the tune of millions of dollars from me if I can't even get into the same room as them? Like, how am I ever going to get these people to trust me to make these types of decisions? And then I started doing a lot of research and I started looking into how do you build trust remotely? What does that process look like? And then just by nature of what happened during that time and our inability to actually connect in person, our viewpoint on whether or not you need to shake someone's hand physically kind of started to change. Yes, there are still some people that are going to want you to get onto a plane and go do a demo here or there. But even if you still have that in-person connection with them, chances are you got that conversation by what you've been doing online, what your website says about you, what your YouTube says about you. The list goes on and on. But people tend to continue to attribute sales and business development to those in-person interactions because that's what we've always known. And that's not to say that you can't do things in that traditional way anymore, but you are a ton more effective on a trade show floor if you've been building trust with your prospects for 6 months before they ever meet you. That dinner that you're going to go to try and, seal the deal is not the first step in the process. It's a final kind of seal of approval that you pass the vibe check after spending 9 months in a deals cycle. And that's just the big purchases, right? When we look at smaller purchases, there's plenty of people that don't even want to physically talk to someone. They want to go do their research, make their decision, and make their purchase. And so I think that there is almost too much attribution back to these traditional sales tactics that we know of, as opposed to all of the foundational work that you can do. And those things can still be incredibly important, but you've greased the wheels if you have focused on how to build authority externally before you ever get into those in-person interactions.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned a couple different times now, but the other word you could use here is trust, right? And something I talk about often. We talked about clarity already, and what is the purpose of your organization? It's helping your customer make the change they're trying to make, right? That's what customer is. They have a problem and they want a solution, and that is your clarity as far as what your business does. Externally, it comes down to trust. So if someone is going to sign up and buy your service or buy your product, what they're saying is that I trust that I have this problem and you can solve it. Mm-hmm. And by far the best way to build that trust is to show people you know what you're talking about and build that online authority. So that's why we call our external framework the favorite teacher framework, because we all had that favorite teacher back in school that they were really good at teaching their subject, and we loved them. We loved going to their class. They were the kind of class we loved going to, and they became that favorite teacher. Maybe that wasn't even our favorite subject, but we enjoyed it so much. So we gotta pop this in, because we're mostly live streaming to LinkedIn, but someone on some very unfriendly man on LinkedIn or on YouTube, but I got a Squidward looking head. I was trying to hold back a laugh as I was just trying to explain this entire concept. I don't even know what a Squidward looking head looks like, because he's got like two giant balls.
He's got a longer face, but like this is what happens when you work with your spouse, guys. Like, you keep it together.
I have a big head. I'm not going to say I don't have a big head. I have to always get large caps and helmets and that kind of thing. I don't think it's shaped like Squidward. So, thank you, Abdul Muqit -88 for that nice comment. Moving on. It's all about building trust. So we'll move on from that thought process there. As a leader, you need to be out there creating content, educating your audience, building trust in the marketplace. If you're not doing that, you are doing your business a disservice, you're doing your team a disservice, and you're not going to be able to actually build that trust at scale that you need to do in the digital age. So we'll wrap up authority on this.
Well, hold on. No, I want to actually touch on one piece here that was brought up about, and again, sorry, I'm going to cover your face for a hot second, but
the Squidward head.
Yeah, cover the Squidward head. I also like how suspiciously quiet the LinkedIn chat is to that. Okay, Weston did come to your rescue here. Big head for big success.
My big brain is,
But the comment that I did want to bring up, and I'd actually cut it off here, is talking about that, like, a lot of industry groups look at like micro strategies and short form content, things that don't necessarily feel like big gestures. And I really wanted to bring this up because I mentioned large scale, like where you see people sitting down on the news couch and like doing these like large segments and that type of thing. But you are so right. When it comes to building trust, the most important thing is showing up regularly and consistently with a message that resonates with your ideal buyer. And that's obviously here on the bullet point list, is to be consistent and be relevant. But consistency when it comes to building trust is one of the most important things. And it doesn't have to be a grand gesture. It doesn't have to be a 4,000 word, I don't know, like blog post. It can be small, succinct things that resonate with your buyer and give them the opportunity to start building like little doses of trust with you every single time you show up. Because it is very hard to be full of shit all the time and show up consistently. When you are not truly speaking from experience, it's difficult to show up and deliver relevant content to your ideal audience and buyers. And so there is a small little deposit happening to the trust bank every single time that you make a post and it resonates with someone. And so it can be a small thought. It can be answering a question that a customer had for you on a call that day. It can be a hot take that you have about the industry that really bothers you, like something that you wish you could say to people that, if you weren't afraid to hurt their feelings, or whatever, trend you want to jump onto that you see on social media. It can be small micro doses of ways of building trust. And I just wanted to hit on that we're not asking you to all of a sudden start hitting up every news outlet or like writing a book for every concept that you have in your mind. Share small bits of information consistently, and over time, it will have massive impacts.
Yes. So to recap so far, build internal clarity, defining the purpose of your business, building external authority. And Michael has a great note there. Be the go-to person in your field, right? Become that trusted expert on the external side of your business. And then finally, when it comes to good leadership, it's growth. Good leaders are growing. they're growing their business, and they're growing their skills, they're growing their mindsets. And this is kind of like the undercurrent of both of those things, right? You have internal clarity, you have external authority, and then you have the growth, which kind of goes under all of it all, right? And
A little
there's
magic sprinkle on top of the two that make
it's
it.
the magic sprinkle. And the Squidward thing's still really funny to me. I feel like I need to get a Squidward costume now for our next live stream. But this is a part that I think people underappreciate sometimes, and that is that you need to be growing as a leader in order to be able to keep up with all of this. You need to be working on your mindset. You need to be taking action, and especially now in the world of AI, you need to show up as a human. You need to come as your own personal self, leverage your personal strengths, and come and be that human element in the leadership too. So what this actually means in practice for you as a leader is, number one, defining, the word personal brand can kind of irk me a little bit, but defining who you are, right? Like understanding your strengths, understanding what you bring to the table as a leader, and leveraging those both internally and externally in the way that you teach. The other massive part of growth is taking intentional action. And I can tell you from consulting, I work with hundreds of clients, like easily 150 clients now over the last decade plus of doing different digital marketing and sales projects. And the biggest difference between who is successful and who is not is who takes intentional action. Some people will wait and wait. It's not ready yet. I can't do it. I'm not sure. And they never take action, which means they never learn. The growth process means that in order to learn, you have to, get a concept, an idea, think, I'm going to try this. I'm going to see what happens. I'm going to implement it, try it, see what happens, and then say, okay, does that work? Did that not work? Should I iterate on that? Should I move forward? And that taking action, that taking intentional action and showing up as a human and being that person, that leader that you need to be, that is how you have that growth. So again, I know this might seem almost too simple, but from a growth perspective, it really is about understanding, who am I? What are my strengths? And how can I start leveraging them by taking action, again, within my organization and externally, as Emma said, by creating content and helping be that trusted expert in your field. So I want you to share your thoughts on the growth side too.
Well, I think I'm going to share a little bit of like my own personal story through this process. But for many of the people that might be joining, maybe they've seen this happen real live over the last 5 years on LinkedIn. But I think it surprises people to know that once upon a time, I was not actually very active on social media. I had like an Instagram with a whole whopping 100 followers that were our family and close friends. And I had gotten rid of Facebook and all the rest of it. And I had actually given a good old try at social selling when I first started in sales about 10 years ago. Probably didn't put in a full effort into it and then was like, oh, this doesn't work. This is garbage. And had I stayed with that mindset and not paid attention to what was happening around me, looked at, again, like how I could get back in front of customers during COVID, and had I been afraid to take action, I wouldn't be here today. And you wouldn't be like, we wouldn't be doing this, right? This wouldn't be a part of how we grew our business and like allowed me to get up on stages and do all of the things that I did. It all started with taking action and seeing like, oh, okay, this video actually did resonate a little. Maybe I should dig into this a little bit more. And at first, it felt really unnatural and it didn't feel like something that was fully me because I was still holding back a little. And then when I finally decided to lean into this aspect of like being a human, not being perfect, trying to show up as I am and share my expertise and my viewpoints in a way that feels natural to me, then I leaned into creating more like TikTok content, making jokes, doing things like making videos after a yoga class when I don't look professional and I don't look great, and, like maybe jump scare for people on the camera. But all of those things allowed me to connect with people at a different level. And when I look back at some of the content that's been most successful or some of the things that have resonated and led to really big opportunities for me in my career, It's things like picking up my phone and ranting about something that just happened on, in an interaction that I had that I needed to get my feelings out about. And then all of a sudden it leads to my biggest keynote that I've ever had. Or the opportunity to like do this kind of stuff. We're clearly not, I start crying laughing about the Squidward thing on the call here, but that doesn't take away from our professionalism. Maybe Squidward does, but I mean, it makes us human and it makes it something that people can connect with. And I hope other people were laughing at that as well. And I think that like being human and connecting with people and continuing to take action, continuing to try new things is what's going to unlock how to do all of this stuff naturally. How to show up online as yourself doesn't happen instantly the first time you make a video. It doesn't like suddenly unlock a world of possibilities for you. It's like an iterative process where you have to continue to experiment. You have to continue to do new things. And the same thing when it comes to internal clarity and the decisions that you're making within your business. If you stand still, you are behind. That is true. Like if you are not moving alongside the world, then you're going to be left behind. But that doesn't mean you have to chase after every shiny object. But going through this process of continuously learning, digging into what technology is available and how it might help you, building digital literacy to the point where you can drive good decisions and experiment where it makes sense. All of those things happen and the magic starts to happen within your organization and your business starts to grow revenue when you take the time to do that learning and experimentation on your own. And so I've seen this play out for myself very substantially. And I know you have as well, James, but I like to share that story, specifically the TikTok side of things, because I can't tell you how many people backhandedly were like, oh, you're the TikTok girl. It's like, yeah, cool. Guess what? I am. And now every person that I meet feels like they know me and they trust me. And now I get to do things that I never would have been able to do had I still tried to fit into a box and be a professional and do what everybody else does. And so this is me trying to push you to go out and try something different. Do something that makes you uncomfortable and scares the shit out of you. If that means it is putting your face on the internet and making a video to talk about something that you can help a customer with, great. If that means reading a book that feels really outside of your comfort zone and learning about something that feels out of grasp, start taking small steps to get to the point where you have a strong enough understanding that you can pull that into your business.
Yes. And I'll add a short little note on that too. Start doing those things towards your vision, towards the purpose of your organization. Start doing things towards building authority, right? Again, we see this growth, this personal growth side of things as being kind of that foundation level on top of, below the internal clarity and the external authority, because that is where it happened. And Emma, briefly mentioned it there. But if you are doing this personal thing correctly, you will have people on a regular basis when they meet you, whether it's a person at an event or someone that pops on a Zoom call because they're a prospect of yours. They will say, I feel like I already know you. That little magic sentence there. And that means that you are showing up as a human and that you're showing up consistently and you are sharing your message and you are sharing your vision consistently. Because that means that, again, you've already built that innate trust with that person and they know you as an individual. Because I will tell you, my reaction to being upset about something is not to go on TikTok and rant about it. That's because it's me. That is me. Like that would not be. It would be phony baloney for me to go on and start ranting on TikTok. That's not how I engage. That's not, I definitely rant about things, but it's not me.
Not the same way that I do even in natural life though.
No. So you find what works for you, take action on it. And like Emma said, this is truly the secret sauce that if you take action consistently on the things we've talked about today, you will look up 6 months from now or 12 months from now in next January, right? The start of next year, and your world will be different by doing this stuff. So that is personal growth.
There's a couple of comments that I want to get to quickly.
Yeah.
Had like kind of questions and stuff for us to dive into.
Sure.
So is it possible to oversaturate the market with content, and how do you find the sweet spot? I think that it is possible depending on the platform. is probably the best way of saying it. In terms of posting to your LinkedIn profile, truly the name of the game there is once a day should be the maximum. When LinkedIn's algorithm looks at stuff, it actually checks how many times you've posted within a day. And if you have posted multiple times, it starts to kind of categorize it almost as if it were a spam account. So that the thought process behind LinkedIn is like one higher quality post a day that you're putting out there to spark conversation. And even if you're not doing it every day, you're posting 2 to 3 times a week. You're still going to show up regularly on people's feeds, even if it's not every single day. And so you definitely don't have to, like, there it is possible to oversaturate. And if you start to post too often, you won't get the reach. And also you might lose some followers because it feels like too much on LinkedIn. Whereas other platforms, you can post onto Instagram Reels, your Instagram profile, your story, TikTok, YouTube. I mean, you can do it so many times within a day and it's not going to penalize it because it, like, each video or post is kind of judged in its own right from the algorithm in terms of reach. But in terms of finding the sweet spot, my suggestion to people when they're first getting started is to give yourself a goal. Like, I want to post once a day. I want to interact with 5 other people's posts with thoughtful comments, and I want to connect with 3 people a day. And like, if that feels overwhelming, then take a step back and have a day of the week where you're focused on growing who you're connected to, and you're doing 2 comments a day, and then you have 1 day a week that you post. But pick what feels sustainable, because going back to the idea of consistency, showing up every week, once a week for a year is going to do a lot more for you than showing up for 30 days and then stopping. So pick what you can do and then find your sweet spot. If it feels like it's becoming too much and you're getting overwhelmed, then back it back up to what you can stay consistent with. For me, my rule of thumb with LinkedIn is I post typically about 5 times a week. I'm doing weekdays. Occasionally, if something really sparks my fancy on the weekends, I will post it. And then on other platforms, I'm posting at least once a day. And sometimes, again, stream of consciousness stuff comes out. And there might be a day where I post 5 videos. But you have to do what feels right to you. And that's that part of, like, kind of the authenticity piece of it. James does not post as frequently as I do because he does not talk as much as I do. So, like, it's not as natural for him to have that kind of, like, verbal vomit out to the internet the same way.
Yeah, I'll just add a couple of thoughts on that. One, we're talking about LinkedIn because outside of the YouTubers who I think might be drunk right now in the chat, but like, people on LinkedIn can't see the YouTube stream of consciousness that's coming in here, and it's outrageous. But on LinkedIn, you are in the top 1% of users if you post once a week. So the way to show up and be visible is just post at least once a week, right? When we work with our clients, we recommend 3 to 5 times a week as far as LinkedIn posts go. We get that question that Dan asked, like, can you post too much? Like, we get that fairly often, but like the irony is usually people asking that question are only posting like once a week. Like they're so far away from being too much when it comes to that like the issue is usually posting not enough. So I would just say, like, consistently trying to get content out once a week is probably one of the best things you can do. And again, when we're talking about content, we're not just talking about social posts. There are things like webinars, blog posts, newsletters. There's tons of different ways that you can educate your audience and show up and build trust. And so what I typically recommend is repurpose content, right? I will record a YouTube video that's 12 minutes long. I will turn that into a blog post, and I will share that on social media once or twice, right? So one piece of content gets used across multiple different mediums. So as people are trying to find information, I'm showing up on these different platforms and being helpful where they are at, but I'm also not having to create original content constantly. I'm able to have my core ideas, my core messaging, and use that across multiple platforms. So hopefully that's helpful too.
Large comment here, so I don't know if it will oh no, it does follow. So, like, what do you do? And I don't think that this is just the insurance industry. I think that there are a lot of industries and just, again, people naturally that do what we call lurking. Just because you're not getting engagement with something doesn't mean that people aren't watching. Now, that being said, if you are hoping to get like engagement and get people fully interacting with the posts, commenting, liking, sharing, try mixing up your content a little bit so that there is maybe some posts that are geared more towards a call to conversation, getting people interacting with you from that standpoint, and recognize not every post is necessarily going to have the same level of engagement. Try also to recognize that, especially if you are targeting an executive audience, again, across the board in any industry, for a lot of them, they feel nervous to comment or engage because if they do, it opens up the floodgates of a lot of people that are doing social selling the wrong way to reach out to them. We have clients who create really, really great content. And when they put it out there, their competitors come into the comments and start commenting to try and sell their product and DMing people who have commented on the post to try and sell their product. That is part of the reality of what social media is for these executives. And so that does make some of them a little bit more hesitant to do that kind of public commenting and engaging because they don't want the rest of that like vulture kind of side of things. But trust that if you are delivering messages that are authentic and providing value, even if they're not commenting, they are watching. And when the time is right, they will reach out to you. There is, I would say, at least 2 to 3 times a week, I will get a message from somebody that includes a post that I've made with what they would have commented rather than commenting it because they don't want to do so publicly. And it takes time to get to the point where you have people maybe reaching out to you in that standpoint, but you have to build the trust. They have to know that you're not going to pitch slap them the minute that they reach out to you. So you stay consistent, keep delivering your message. And then if you want that engagement, do things that are maybe a little bit lighter or a little bit more like engagement heavy, asking questions, asking people to provide feedback to you from that standpoint that wouldn't get into that land of feeling like a liability.
Yeah, I'll say too, I think from the engagement side of things, the type of content that tends to get more engagement also is content that's more driven by your personal experiences and you talking about how you help clients, but like authentically, or talking about your opinions on things that are happening in your industry. That tends to perform better versus stuff that you could just go to ChatGPT and say, write me a post about X, right? And copy and pasting it. Like, you're not going to get much engagement on that because that's just bland, generic content that ChatGPT can create. If you talk about things that you're doing in an interesting way and you're sharing those experiences and you're sharing your opinions on what's happening, that tends to invite conversation. But a study that I cite often that created this concept called the 1% rule. And this is where I talked about earlier about if you post once a week, you are in the top 1% of LinkedIn users, right? From a content creation thing. So the way that online communities tend to work is that 1% of people create new content. Then typically about 8 or 9% of people actually engage with that comment or that content. They will comment, they will engage with it. So right there, you have 1% create, 9% will engage, 90% of people on online websites, so social media platforms in this case, 90% of people just lurk. All they do is look. They never actually even engage. So it's very, very common. But like Emma said, just because they're not engaging doesn't mean they're not there. It doesn't mean you're not actually being a leader for those people. We can keep asking questions, but I do want to quick.
Oh, go ahead.
I just want to say, if you want help with this stuff, this is the work that we do at Roelof Consulting. We help teams with this digital leadership concept, right? We help them with internal clarity within their organization. We help with creating that online authority, building trust at scale. And then, of course, the personal growth side of things, we help people take action. We do consulting work or directly with businesses. We do work in our community, which is our online community where we're actually trying to help people take action and learn these things and have a peer group to help hold you accountable. And we also do speaking and workshops. We talk about these topics too. And when I say we do speaking workshops, Emma is the speaker. Nobody
That's
wants
not true.
Squidward on stage.
I mean, if it makes you feel better, going back to the comments, I think in one of the comments they said I look like Elphaba from Wicked, but they called her the Green Lady. So I think they might just be now trying. They got such a good reaction out of us that they're trying to go more for it.
YouTube's on some sort of something today, but yeah, I want to call that out, and I'm gonna pop the QR code up. If you fill out that form, we'll talk to you. We'll learn about you, your business, your goals. Obviously, absolutely no pressure to work with us. We just want to hear what you're trying to do and see if we can help you in any way too. So I want to call that out. Obviously, we have time to keep answering a couple more questions on here too.
I'm going to pop the QR code up into the corner so that I can pull up this other question. Where did it go? Okay. So how do you typically respond when people bring up your social media activity in real life, positive or otherwise? I have people mentioning my post to me and I still nervously laugh nervously and thank them. I think that's probably how I still react at this point is like, oh, thank you so much. I'm so glad to hear that. And then usually what I do is kind of like segue the conversation to them to learn a little bit more about them, because I'm usually at a little bit of a deficit in terms of they know me. They know things about me from everything that I put out there. So I want to learn about them and kind of even out the conversation a little bit. So that would be my biggest tip is like, thank them. It can be kind of uncomfortable, and then move forward and just start talking to them and learning more about them and their background as well. I think one thing that's important to recognize is you get more comfortable with people knowing your social media presence and interacting with your content from that standpoint. But a lot of times, the part that does get kind of uncomfortable is the people who maybe have been lurking, who watch, and you haven't had the opportunity to interact with them in the content or comments the same way that you have with people who are really active. So take it as the compliment that it is, unless they're saying they like really hate your content or you look like Squidward, and then maybe laugh it off and move forward. But I think the most important thing is that you're getting comments, which means that even if, or like in person, real life comments, which means your content strategy is playing out the way you would hope it would. And you're building trust and you're building authority.
Yeah. I'll just add here too, is that fear stops people from doing these things. It stops fear across the board. Internally, there is fear that stops people from doing clarity within their organization because they're afraid to actually, truly define what their purpose is. They find it easier to be wishy-washy and bounce all over what they're doing. Fear absolutely stops people from posting online, creating content, and becoming that favorite teacher in their industry. And fear stops people from taking action. And everyone who's on this call, I'm assuming, is a leader in some sort of fashion in their life. And we have all done things that we know are uncomfortable when we start doing them. And there are risks, like what if we look stupid? What if we don't know what we're doing? Yada, yada. And that can stop you. And that can be great, right? You can say, what if I look stupid and I create content and people think that, I look funny, right? That could stop you and you'll never do it. But you'll never, ever get the benefits. You will never be the one who actually shows up consistently, builds that trust, and grows your business because of that. And increasingly, it is very important that you show up online. It used to be you could get away with not having an online presence, but even, brick and mortar businesses nowadays, people look up online. If you refer a friend to some sort of brick and mortar business, oftentimes they will still look it up online quick to kind of like double check that it's there, right? And double check that's alive. And so if you're not doing this stuff, you might have the short-term fear of like feeling uncomfortable to learn something new or do something different. But the long-term fear is that you will lose your business. You will lose your role in your organization, because this is where the future is going. Like we are quickly accelerating into this. So I just want to note that like there is a fear there, but like you need to actually address it. And you need to move forward. And I'm getting motivational speaker here, maybe. the best way to get over fear is taking action. Typically like what you need to do is just take that first step forward, and all of a sudden you realize it's not so scary, and actually it does work out. And yes, you get people who might say things or do things or whatever else, but more often than not, you're able to help people. And that's I guess one last note on this little here at ranting, Dave Chrysler. So here's a rant from me. It's not really a rant though. Yes, you will have people that say things or whatever else, but the best mindset you can get into with all of this stuff is serving others. If you're not looking at yourself, if you're not concerned about how you appear, you're not concerned about how your business operates, if you're concerned about your customer and you're concerned about the best way to serve them, whether that's in your business, or your processes and your services on the internal clarity side of things, or externally, anytime I create content, I think of my ideal customer. I don't think of myself. I don't think about what do I want to say. I think of, when I think of this person, what do I want to tell them that'll help them? If I create content with that mindset of serving others, that tends to be the most effective way of building that audience, building that trust. So I guess long story short, don't focus on yourself, focus on leading and serving others, and it'll come much more naturally.
There is a lot more to come from us on the topic of digital leadership this year. This is just the beginning. So make sure to stay tuned to both of us and our content and everything that we've got going on. And as James said, specifically on the internal clarity side of things, we do a lot of speaking and workshops in that category. When it comes to deep hands-on consulting, we cross over with kind of that internal clarity, who's your buyer, how are you serving them, but then also helping you build that authority in the marketplace. Do plenty of speaking in that side as well. And if you're an individual as opposed to an organization that's looking to interact with us, our Catalyst community is the best place to do that. We have a number of members in the chat here today with us. So make sure to reach out to us if you want to learn more about it, or go to our website and apply to join the program. And we can certainly get you connected with other folks that are hoping to build their authority, and we can all learn together. But thank you so much for everybody who has joined us today, all of the lively comments, both constructive and not. We really appreciate everyone being here, and our DMs are open if you've got questions or comments or anything that we can help you with. But have a wonderful day, everybody.